Well, this is a Friday afternoon. No, it's a Friday morning, coming up the afternoon. And I'm joined by Pat McGard, as I always am. You know, Pat, I put a thing up on Facebook today. It was a little recording I made direct to camera about what was happening at the time, about 11 years ago. And, you know, I was far better when you weren't there. I think you're humbling me.
I've always said I'd drag you down.
Well, I just thought I'd relieve my bosom of that hard fact. Anyway, it's beginning to rain in Donegal, you tell me.
Yes, it is. It was a nice morning, but it's starting to change now.
Well, I suppose it's what's going on inside your head and your heart, Pat, that counts.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, Jude, before we start, I have to give him a mention, because I don't normally do this, but I have a nephew coming from Scotland today. He'll be arriving shortly, and he's our biggest fan, so I'm just giving him a mention.
What a man. You look after him when he comes. Start by giving him money. And then
I don't have to give him money.
Put him up for a couple of weeks.
Maybe a glass of red wine is as far as they can stretch.
Well, that's good. That's good. You'll enjoy that, Pat. Good to know. It's amazing the amount of always has been the case between Donegal and Scotland.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. I mean, no wonder they wanted to build a bridge.
Well, Jude, I recall we went over, a lot of my wife Rosie's family emigrated, and we were over and staying with her aunt in Paisley, and she said at one occasion that she knew more people at Mass on a Sunday morning in Paisley than she did back home in Carndonagh. Really? And she said in one area, they were all in and around Paisley, there was a street, or in Glasgow, where they were all from West Donegal, another street where they were all from Inishowen. And she says the numbers from Donegal were phenomenal.
Yeah. See, I think when we talk about immigration, we forget that, you know, for a lot of people to be living in Scotland especially, but even England as well, it's the best of both worlds because of modern technology and cheap flights and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You're away from home. You're sort of out of people's hair and they're out of yours, but you can pop back and forward with no bother.
Yeah. Maybe we should stick with this whole idea of population. Let me tell you something. At the bottom of my road, I can go down nowadays and quite almost literally get on a bus that takes me directly to Glasgow. I can't get on a bus that takes me down the bottom of my road to Dublin or to Galway, but I can get one. Like, that's how different it is. But Jude, anyway, this week there was yesterday or the day before there was a release of the population statistics.
That's right. I saw that.
And Jude, when I was a wee fella, I remember being told very clearly that the population of Ireland during the famine had reached somewhere in the region of 8 million. And, you know, and we at that stage were about 3.5 million. This is a way back. I started school in the late 50s, well, not late 50s, 57. But I remember we were in about 3.5, 4 million. Now, the last day, the Republic of Ireland reached 5.1 million. And I presume the North is about 1.6 million, 1.7 million.
Right, yeah.
So, Jude, we're not too far off what we were. During it's an 1851 pre-famine, sorry.
Just after the famine, yeah. Well, you say that with a jaunty note in your voice. Is it such a good thing, do you think? Really,
I grew up in an era, you just mentioned it yourself, so let's stick with that. When I was growing up, Jude, there's a place called Ardodonald in Letterkenny. I'll explain it in simple terms. There's a place called Ardodonald in Letterkenny. And when I started off in a newspaper in Letterkenny, I turned around to me then boss, a man called Sean Curran, and I said, "Oh, Sean, things are changed now. The economic situation is so much better." And he was a far more intelligent man than me. And he turned around and said, "Pat, would you ever grow up?" He says, "Just Ardodonald," because everybody knew everybody in the small town back then. He says, "There isn't a house or a household there that somebody hasn't emigrated." And, you know, we went over every house we could have knew of, and Jesus, he was 100% right. Dude, I grew up in an era where immigration, Rosie, my wife, I think all of her brothers at one stage emigrated, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them living in England now for more than 40 years. All around here, immigration was a way of life. But now, Jude, we're talking about the population of Ireland has increased by, I think it's 8% in 6 years. And all over the place, I can see there's not a hotel people, some of them are closing because they can't get enough staff. My son works in computers and there's non-stop advertising looking for staff. Jude, at one stage, if we were overpopulated, we would have had a massive unemployment crisis. It's the exact opposite. So I presume the economic situation and the fact that so many people are coming here as an indicator that things are really going well economically, despite the difficulties.
Well, I'll just come back to that in a minute, but do you feel, as I do, that we sometimes present immigration as being, well, a sort of safety valve to get rid of the unemployed, and that it's these poor people are exiled all their days and their hearts are aching. There's, as Christy Moore sang about, there's boys dreaming of
The
Donegal,
hills of
Philadelphia.
Donegal, and the
Do
city of
do you go along with
Chicago
that
is
notion of being exiled and the pain of exile, or do you see any upside to it?
Well, Judith, let me tell you another story. I went to a funeral one time in Leicester, and I met these two guys, and they were from the Isle of Doe and Inishowen. And I said to them one day, jeepers, one of them is married to an English woman, and he's got, well, I wouldn't say an English accent, but he's lived there nearly 40 years. And I actually said to him, like, you've done well. And he sort of looked at me, he said, Pat, are you serious? And I said, well, the usual, what do you mean? He says, Pat, I still dream, he says, of home. He says, I still dream of the sound of the ocean down. And he says, see, when we came first, he says, we lived down a side street where we looked up onto a window of, I think, an Indian restaurant. And he says, that was what we seen. He says, it took me many years, he says, to adjust. Dude, there's many, many people I know that immigration was a forced thing. It wasn't a choice.
Yeah, but I think when people, that's true. A lot of people are forced to emigrate because they need employment. But many people who do then go abroad, build a life for themselves, get a job, get a career, make advancements in it. And there's a great sense of fulfillment in that. And today with, global travel, with internet and all the rest of it, it's not nearly, I don't believe it's as painful as we sometimes imagine. And in fact, I'd make a case for saying that some people who emigrate and who might find it hard at first lead fuller and more fulfilled lives abroad than they might have lived if they'd stayed at home.
Jude, I think it's changed. The world's got a smaller place. Jude, when my mother's uncle left for Canada, or at least one, and like his brother never saw him again. It's a different world now. Jude, you can get your mobile phone. You can go talk to somebody like a Zoom meeting. You can call them up. Like we have friends in Australia, and like they ring regularly. 2 years ago, you just didn't exactly, Australia was a long way away. So the world's got smaller, and I think communications got so much better. And like jeepers, Jude, we didn't have Ryanair and so on back in the day. So you're 100% right. Things have changed. But immigration, Jude, like most of our, what does it say? All our wars were happy, but all our songs were sad.
That was immigration, rubbish for a start.
But of course it was. But it's like everything. There was a certain truth in it. Like I knew people used to love sitting nearly in the corner and crying into their pints about their son or daughter who had immigrated. But Jude, hey, the other thing as well, there's a place outside Falcara, and it's an absolutely stunningly beautiful place. It's called the Bridge of Tears. It was an old one from West Donegal. The families would walk with whoever was emigrating, and it's sort of like a mountain pass, and they'd go as far as this bridge, and the families would turn home, and the immigrant would walk on alone, and it's haunting, and you sort of go,
I accept that completely, Pat.
But I think your point, Jude, is well made. I think things have changed.
Well, you see, I've got all our children are living abroad, 4 of them, one in the States and the other 3 in England. And I would have to say that I'm sure they think about home. Well, I spoke to in a FaceTime thing with the guy in New York, and he was saying, well, most days I'm thinking about home. But he says, that doesn't mean that I want to up stakes and go and live at home. There is a difference between the two. But anyway, let's shift from that to the implications of the increase. We normally see the increase in population as a good sign, as a sign of prosperity and so on. But what about the fact that there's a shortage of housing? And if you have an increase in population, you're going to have an even greater shortage of housing. Has that been factored in when we talk about?
No, remember we were discussing, and you had your usual go at our president, Michael D. Higgins. Michael D. got it. Housing is a disaster. Jude, we have a net increase of, I think it's 8.1% on the population in 6 years. There is no way we have kept pace with that growth. And in fact, we had a problem with housing beforehand. Jude, the short version of a very long story was when I was growing up, the local authority housing was provided by a lot of people, and then suddenly ideologic positions come in, and it was various parties that leave it to the market, and all these private developers were supposed to develop houses and so on. But hey, there were a lot of people missed that net, so we reached a situation about 10 years ago where there was homelessness was a massive problem, and it's still a massive problem. Now the government have thrown literally billions at it, but it's only starting to come through now that they're addressing it, and it'll take another 4 or 5 years.
Well, you would think, Pat, I mean, I'm a total amateur in these things, but you would think that for people who can't afford to buy a house, right, that the government should be capable of building houses, because that's something that will give employment to lots of people in the building of them. It'll provide provision for people. If people settle into these houses, they'll have jobs, they'll be paying taxes, they'll be buying goods. It's hard to see it as being such a ghastly problem. And talking about the market, I mean, leave aside this, what they call social housing now. Take private houses. Surely, if there's a demand for them, there should be people capable of building them and selling them to people. Surely the market would make sure there wasn't excessive prices for houses that were built.
There's, I don't know, you need to get somebody like Owen O'Brien on here to sort of explain, but there's all sorts of factors involved. There was, in Dublin, a lot of developers bought land to hoard it, to supply and demand, to ensure that the price went up. They held on to it until the price was right. There's also, and in the Republic, there's a very jeepers. People could object to planning permission for a snail going across the road. It's ridiculous, some of the stuff. And of course, there is the ideological thing about leave it to the market, and that's so many factors. Jude, our homeless situation and housing situation is very serious. When the wee president said it is a disaster, a lot of people were trying to, the political class or the professional political people tried to have a go at him. But the outcry from the ordinary electorate was so strong that they shut their mouths.
Well, now, you mentioned Owen O'Brien there, and it is a big thing with Sinn Féin, and they are very critical of the Southern government for the way they've handled it. What will Sinn Féin do when and if they get into government that will solve or address even this housing crisis?
Well, they are talking about bringing in rules and regulations in regard to vulture funds. One of the big problems in Dublin, particularly in the big cities, are these vulture funds coming in from outside. And the minute an apartment block's finished, they buy it up. They pay above the odds for the apartment, and ordinary people can't. That's one of the things. The second thing I think they're talking about is creating a sort of social housing in key areas, and making it part of the policy that the local county councils build houses and make them available to and I presume they have other plans, but I think the whole thing is basically having an overall strategy. The Dublin government only started addressing housing and particularly this last 5-7 years. Up until that, it was sort of nobody took it too seriously until it became a real pressing hot button issue.
Well, when you see when council houses or social housing is built, do you have much NIMBYism going on? Not in my backyard.
Of course you will.
Classes.
Of course you will. But that's hard cheese. Donegal, I told you the last day, there are more than 3,000 people on a waiting list in Donegal. And like in Donegal, this is a relatively our population. I wrote it down. Donegal, our population went up to 4.5%. Hey, by the way, just want to mention that. No, the county had the biggest increase in population. And I'll buy you a bottle of wine if you can guess which one.
Dublin.
It was. No, Longford, 14.1% increase.
God.
And Leitrim, Leitrim, year on year, the population went down all the time. It's the loveliest place too, Leitrim. 9.5 increase in 6 years.
Well, maybe I thought I saw a thing that said that Dublin had the biggest number of people, but it might be that in percentage terms.
Dublin's at cheaper. Dublin now is at nearly 1.5 million people now.
Yeah. But it's good to see increased numbers in places like Leitrim and Longford and so on. But whether that will translate into, you think that'll revive the economy in those countries?
Yeah, that's what's happening as far as I can figure out. See the places that were dying once are now coming back to life because of, well, COVID was probably the catalyst for that, working from home. Dude, the number of people that are working from home now is phenomenal.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, let's move on to our second topic, which is the by-elections that happened in England yesterday.
Yes.
And in which Boris Johnson's party were trounced.
Yes.
Trounced. One of the elections, I'm not sure what the name of it was, but the one where the Lib Dem guy got elected or person got elected.
Tiverton and Huntington, I think it is.
Huntington and whatever. The apparently it was the biggest by-election defeat ever.
Yeah.
Anywhere. That's something.
Apparently the what do you call these psephologists, the guys who study elections, they're all scrambling to find out. Dude, the woman, her name was Helen Horford. I think that's her name. She was the Tory candidate. She locked herself in a room last night. She wouldn't come out and meet the media. But dude, the poor woman, I feel sorry. Apparently she's a decent enough woman, if you can call a Tory a decent woman. And apparently a nice woman, and she's a former deputy head of a school. But anyway, she not only she lost a 24,000 seat majority by 6,000, so there's a turnaround of 30,000. Like, that's really something. This was a Tory seat for 130 years. Well, so, dude, and I was listening to several people this morning on the Tory. And Bojo was going as usual. I would just carry on, and we're going to listen to. But Jude, the one thing they all say that by-elections don't mean anything. Yes, they do, Jude. They absolutely do.
But they're different. They are different.
They are different. Yeah, they're different. But they're also a weather vane that the people don't like it, and unless you change, you're going to get a heavy defeat. And any party that doesn't pay attention, it's the best sort of Gallup poll or straw poll you can get.
Or an electronic prod.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not totally convinced. I'd like to think that was the case, but it is a fact that all right. So Boris Johnson is where he is because he was a vote winner, and people are saying, "Oh, look now, he's a vote loser." He's costing seats rather than accumulating them. I'm not 100% sure of that. One of the difficulties getting rid of Boris is there's nobody to replace him. There's nobody to replace him.
I'd say Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are praying to God they don't replace him because he's getting rapidly going downhill. Jude, they lost 500 council seats at the local government elections, which is quite serious. But Jude, had they lost the other one or lost it by or held on to it, and with a reduced majority, they could have turned around and said, it's whatever. I know so. But Jude, when you lose a 24,000 majority and then get hammered by a further 6,000, which is the biggest switch around in electoral history as far as they can figure out. Dude, that is more than just a blip. That is serious discontent with.
Yeah, but where Wakefield, where the Labour Party was running, they won comfortably. But there are people in Labour who are saying, well, really, it should have been a bit more of a stonking victory in the circumstances, which actually again puts a question mark under Keir Starmer. And we'll be coming back to Keir Starmer and our third person we're talking about. But I fret a wee bit that we get too excited about by-elections. I take your point that that's a historic win. And it's Lib Dems, that also worries me a wee bit because it's not going to be the Lib Dems will be in contention for government.
But Jude, there was apparently there was, and I was not aware of this because I didn't think apparently there was an unwritten pact that they stayed out of Wakefield, the Lib Dems, and the Labour basically stayed out of Tiverton because they knew there wasn't. And apparently, whether it was unwritten or a tacit agreement, I am not sure. But the Tory, that's a bit of a pincer movement for the Tories. If the Labour Party the next time say, right, we're going to concentrate on the seats we can win, you concentrate, and that's the Tories out. Jude, Jude, the point I'm making and keep making is that the fact that had it been just a sort of minor victory, or so on for the Lib Dems, or had it been they held on to the seat with a reduced majority, they could have spun it and saying, well, this is just a midterm by-election, and we've all been here before and so on. But Jude, when you switch it, the level of switch, it shows the disenchantment with the government. Dude, Partygate, law breaking, a dishonest prime minister, sending asylum people to Rwanda. Jude, somewhere along the way, it's like Marmite. The Tory party has become Marmite.
Well, I noticed actually, it's sort of ironic that Johnson made sure he was far away in Rwanda.
Yeah.
When the results of the by-elections came out. I still feel that the Tory party are probably split. The Conservative chairman resigned in the wake
Oliver
of
Dowden,
at 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. The sheen has gone off Boris. He's clearly not a guy who's going to win votes everywhere, every time.
Exactly. Did you hear what the guy, Oliver Dowden, said? He said, someone has to take responsibilities for these defeats. You don't need to get a witch doctor to study Antral, see what he means there.
Yeah.
And there was someone else. Normally the old pro forma is when you're resigning, and I pledge allegiance to the Prime Minister and the wonderful work he's doing.
Yeah.
Dowden said he was pledging allegiance to the Conservative Party.
Yes, the sheen has gone off, but I still would say that there isn't somebody with enough fairy dust to take his place at the moment. Although you see, there's so many MPs that you see them occasionally on the box and you say, who's that? Never knew he existed or she existed. So there may well be in the ranks of the Tories a guy or maybe several people who, given a chance, would grow into the job, who would shine, who might just pull in the voters as well as or better than Boris.
Jude, I caught the tail end of Question Time on BBC last night, and there was Jude, and I literally mean the tail end, about 10 minutes, and there was a Tory woman on last night, and talk about arrogant. She was asked by your woman, the chairperson, about party getting on. She said, well, there's certain people who won't like us and so on, but we have to move on. And there was a woman said, I was a Conservative voter all my life. She says, my father got ill, or mother, I can't remember now which. And she says, we could, in the last 5 weeks of their life, she says, we couldn't go see that, my father or my mother, whatever it was. Yes. And she says, I will never, as long as this Prime Minister is a vote Tory again. The woman just turned around and says, well, that's the way it is. She says some people won't like it. And I thought, with that degree of arrogance, no wonder you people are losing. At the very least, you could have said, look, I'm really sorry. There were mistakes made. The Prime Minister has apologized for them. A wee bit of humbleness, a wee bit of eating a humble pie would have gone down well. Instead of that, it was just sheer arrogance, like Archie's.
Yeah. I think perhaps the sheen indeed has gone off Boris. For most people, particularly women, I notice at things like Question Time, the women you'll have these hardline guys, sometimes working class guys who I saw the Question Time from Newcastle, and there was working class guys saying, oh, Boris is a good guy and I'll stick with him and so on. But it was the women in the audience who were speaking up and saying, do you realize that my mother died and I couldn't get to speak to her, looking at her on a bloody iPad? I think women are, they're just any charm that Boris had is gone as far as many of the women are concerned, and an awful lot of the men. As I say, there's still that problem, though, of getting somebody who will at least give them a chance of getting a similar victory to what Boris got in 2019. And, that was such a big win that it's hard. He's got a lot of political capital there, so to speak. He may have gone through it. He might have burned through it.
It was all based on absolute lies. And it says something about the British, right? He told he told them the British electorate that rather than give 350 million a week to Europe, he was going to give it to the health service. That he had a Brexit deal done, that it was oven ready, and so on, and that there'd be no difficulties with anything, and so on. Dude, they're ready, that he had several trade deals lined up with Australia, America, and so on. So far, maybe they've got one with Australia, but they certainly haven't one with America. Brexit is not done, and the 350 million a week the health board the health service never materialized. So, Jude, they con the electorate, and they don't seem to. I would sometimes wonder, but let me insult the British. I sometimes wonder, as electorate over there, are so stupid and unbelievable, because, Jude, he has conned them right, left, and centre, and they're still supporting him.
I don't know if we can throw stones ourselves there. I mean,
I know that
some of the
but
people that are elected.
but you to follow on from your, people in working class areas, if they seriously think Boris Johnson and the old Eton Club and the Bulletin Boys are out to look after working class people, God, someone gone to put your head a bit further into the sand.
Yeah, the fact is, I'm trying to remember, when did the Tories come to power? Because they've been in power for quite a while now, haven't
12
they?
years, Jude, as far as I remember now.
Well, even just simple longevity would be something that would move voters. People get, populations, for one reason or another, they get fed up. They just get fed up with the same party. And it might well be that that'll be a part of the reason that the Tories will crash to defeat in the next election.
Jude, can I take you digress for a second? I bet you haven't been watching, but I started watching, I think it was about 2 Monday nights ago, a program called Sherwood. And it's basically, there's 2 murders in this village somewhere in the north of England. And it's basically a replay of the miners' strike. It all harks back to the miners' strike. Oh. And it's actually, it's a very interesting thing. And there seems to be elements of truth in the storyline, and the fact that in several villages, Thatcher and people put basically spies into villages, and they deliberately provoked the miners' strike because they needed a big one for the Conservative ideology. And it was sort of said openly last night that the paper, after the 30-year rule, they found papers that saying they needed a big one for ideological reasons and for Thatcherism. So, Jude, I sometimes wonder, and there was a depiction of a Tory woman who said she had no regrets about the miners' strike. People had the choice to work or not. And basically, to hell with the working class, as long as I'm all right, Jack.
I'm amazed, given what we've seen. I mean, we're not English, we're not miners, but the image of those policemen on horseback,
whacking that,
knocking 10 bells, 9 bells out of the running miners. I just thought, how on earth could communities ever forgive that? And yet,
the bitterness is still there, Jude, and this program actually shows that. Even 30 years later, this a scab, they called each other scab, and
that's right, I remember. Let's hope they do. Let's hope they do. Given the fact that we both are bigoted against the Conservative Party.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Let's talk about a man who's gone out of the limelight, but who's, actually 2 men, very quickly, because we're about 6 minutes, I would say, left. Have we? How long's left?
No, we have nearly 8 minutes.
Okay, we'll give about 4 to each. 2 men. Let's deal with the lesser of the 2 first of all. Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings is setting himself up now as a political writer, is it, or speech?
Sort of political pundit,
and he has a particular model that he admires enormously, Bismarck. Did you do history at school, Pat?
I did.
Do you remember? We did Bismarck?
No, we didn't. We did for the last 2 years, and we did the Renaissance, the Medicis and the popes and all that sort of stuff. But no, we did a wee bit of that. The Bismarck, and what was it? 1851.
Yeah. He was a man that put. He was the man that invented Germany, essentially.
He was the first chancellor, wasn't he?
Yeah. And they called him the Iron Chancellor, and he believed in what was it, blood and iron. He was a very, driving, almost dictatorial guy. And apparently,
he was irreplaceable.
So Dominic Cummings recognized as a soulmate in that. However, the papers, at least one of the reports, notes that he was astonished whenever he was dropped, and he was extremely bitter for the rest of his days, which would match very closely with Dominic Cummings. Would you have any respect for Cummings at all?
Mixed, I was going to say but when you think back to the COVID thing, remember he went out and had this press conference in the garden where he told an absolute Hans Christian Andersen version of I'm driving up 400 miles to check it.
To see if he could drive.
To see if he could drive. I hold on to a Landis plane with 400 passengers type thing. And that was how believable it was. And, and so on. But then the other things that I don't think there's any doubt, some of the things he said about Boris Johnson were 100% true. That he lied through his teeth in regard that, and when it came to the protocol, he actually said, look, we're going to sign up to this for the election. we won 83, but we're not going to honour it. So in other words, he was ready to break an international treaty, that he was a liar, that he was a cheat, that he would do anything to win, and his only thing he's concerned about is his own survival and his own reputation, in the sense that he wants to be a prime minister and to hell with everybody else. And I think
Cummings is saying this, but couldn't we have worked that out ourselves?
Yeah, but the only thing about he was able to give insider detail of what was going on, and about the lies and the shenanigans. About Carrie, whatever her name is, his wife. About trying to place her in top jobs, trying to make her chief of staff. He was having an affair with her while it was the other wife was getting treatment for cancer or something. That they don't even know how many children he has, and all the things he was at. I think
one of the things that he attacked Boris for in this most recent event, I think it was the University College London, he said that Johnson was hopeless at prioritizing stuff.
Absolutely.
That he would change priorities, not by the month, not by the week, not even by the day, but by the meeting. So in the course of one meeting, he had 3 or 4 different things moved to the top of the priorities list, which sounds pretty bad. I predict that Dominic Cummings will be a very unsuccessful political pundit. I think it's because it's this personal liking thing. There's something about the guy makes you want to go and hit him a dig. You don't agree?
As an old colleague of mine used to say, he's got a type of fish you'd never tire slapping.
You have some nice friends, I must say. Okay, let's move on to a totally different sort of man. In the last few minutes, we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes to talk about Mick Lynch. We need more than that. Talk about him, Pat. Talk about this man.
Jude, I could talk about Mick Lynch all day. I'll tell you something.
Prioritize your remarks.
I wish Mick Lynch was leader of the Labour Party. I really genuinely do.
Yes.
I've never seen any, like Keir Starmer, and all, I cannot, and I'm repeating, I even bore myself for saying, but I can't tell the difference between Keir Starmer and David Cameron or Tony Blair, or he's just what do you call it? A vanilla politician who doesn't seem to stand for anything. It could be as easily a Tory leader as a Labour leader and all.
Okay, what about Mick then?
Mick, I know where Mick stands. He absolutely destroyed. The arrogance, Jude, of Piers Morgan. He was on about some guy from the Thunderbirds, the Hood. And he spent 5 minutes talking about this guy who the icon that Mick Lynch uses for his social media is this guy, the Hood, who's the most evil person. And Piers Morgan goes on about this. And then we had Kay Burley on Sky trying to ask him what a picket was. And I could keep going. But anyway, bottom line, my man of the week by a mile, Jude, was Mick Lynch. He was he articulated, and just I think he probably helped destroy the Tory party in these 2 by-elections because he exposed them totally.
Yeah, he really is another example of these people that I'd never heard of him before.
Never, same here.
But they suddenly pop up and you say, my God, why was that guy underneath the radar for so long? Why wasn't he up front? Why wasn't the Labour Party getting? But he was very good. They said somebody accused him of sending funds. You send funds to your union, helps fund the Labour Party. And he says, no, that's not true. We don't fund the Labour Party. And he had a few critical words about Starmer and about how he wasn't representing the Labour Party or representing the working people. The guy's demeanor is just right. Very relaxed, very straight talking. And of course, he has the added advantage, and that is he's got an Irish name.
Absolutely.
Parents are from Ireland. I hope that's not biasing us in his favor.
But number 2, he said he was asked for who was his political hero. He said James Connolly. But remember, Jude, here, talk about agenda setting. Richard Madeley's the first big interview he did last Tuesday or Monday. Tuesday, I think it was.
I saw that one.
Richard Madeley on Good Morning Britain. And the first question Madeley asked him, are you a Marxist? Now, Jude, you talk about, they didn't ask them, talk about a Tory pro-establishment media. Like, are you out to smear him before even, not what are the causes of your members going on strike? What is their pay? What are they looking for? Are you a Marxist, Jude? What a ridiculous, but Jude, talk about agenda setting on behalf of the Tory party.
Oh yeah. Let's get the 2 words, Marxist, Mick Lynch. Get those two words into one sentence. It doesn't matter what you say. Just get the two in there. The
Yeah.
other thing I noticed that the son as dubbed him as Mad Mick. Mad Mick. So they're hoping, but actually people now know the son just as they know Boris Johnson. And the fact that the son says that, I hope they'll react different. They are very opposite as they would.
No, he's getting massive support, Jude.
Okay.
Massive support.
What will we say? What will our final words be? Because we're about 5 seconds.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. That's a good idea. And light a candle for Mick Lynch.
Yes.
Maybe send him money.